Have you reached your assigned system yet? The comm system starts spewing the voice of her superior. She'd hoped to be able to relax on her way to Star System V5610, but obviously with the amount of money she was getting paid to perform this survey, there was no way her boss wouldn't constantly call asking for updates and confirmation that the ship was operating properly. Sir, as I said in my last report 3 hours ago, I won't reach the system today unless I kick up the warp drives to their maximum. It will at least take a few more days before I arrive. The cryptic states, as she verifies the data on another screen. Her boss doesn't seem to be happy with that information. If you kick up the drives, are you telling me you haven't been going top speed for the whole trip? His voice increases in volume as he speaks. Killia chuckles at the mental image of her boss leaning closer to the microphone to try to intimidate her from several light years away. You think this is funny? Her employer states after she forgot to mute herself. If you do not take your job seriously, I'll have to cut your pay for this trip. Teach you what happens when you disrespect your employer. At this, Killia turns more serious. Last I checked, I'm still within the delays of my contract, and I haven't infringed any of the clauses. I even put up with all the impromptu checkups you love so much, so stop with your empty threats. We signed the contract, and if you break it, then I'll receive way more than the amount we agreed to. You'll get your daily updates and that's it. See you in a few weeks when I have the system scans organized for you. With that, she closes the comlink, and skitters off to her chambers to rest. As she curls up in her alcove, she thinks of the enraged face her boss made when she cut contact, and falls asleep feeling proud of standing up to the old bastard. In total, she had been travelling for over a week when she finally reached the system. Not losing any time, she deployed the drone swarms all over the system before approaching the red dwarf at the centre of the system. As soon as the ship reached the proper distance from the star, it initiated the refueling sequence on its own, allowing Killia to focus on the drone's data feed. Well, now the waiting game. The insectoid looks at the feed of information scrolling in front of her. Ore deposits, some signs of monocellular life on one of the planets, and reports of the outer system drone having reached their various destinations amongst the various debris fields and dust clouds forming past the orbit of the second planet. Suddenly, the log shows a major alert. Not an urgent one, so something not detected by the long-range sensors, but of significant importance. At first she expects it to be a simple ore-rich meteorite, or maybe a dwarf planet hidden in the far reaches of the system, but to her surprise, as the log on her screen is replaced by the live feed of the drone, she sees a spaceship of alien make. Oh, looks like we just struck gold. She senses around her with her antennas, looking for the clock in her cockpit, and figures out she has a few hours before her report is due, so she decides to halt the refueling procedures and make her way to the newfound spacecraft. When her ship approaches the vessel, she starts to get excited. The only thing familiar about it is the general shape of an Atmo-capable craft. How did the scan not notice that? The ship is the size of a freaking cruiser for ancestors' sake. A quick notification appears on her screen, answering her question, as if the drone was capable of answering her question directly. That startles her in the instant, before remembering that no, her ship's systems could not achieve sentience because everything was properly shackled. Shaking herself to refocus her mind back on the current task, she looks at the readings and scratches the bottom of her maw with one of her manipulators. The fact that the ship is somehow not sending back any signal sent its way explains the failure of the scanners, but raises the question of how does it do that? She decides to take a few risks and approach the ship, but before she can get too close, the ship is suddenly shaken to a halt, as in front of her the void of space is replaced by a green haze she can barely see the alien ship through. Well, that's confirmed this isn't a ship from any of the Coalition species. I don't see any weapons, so it should be safe to breach the shields, but I should probably raise my own if they're hidden. Fidgeting with the controls of the warp drive, a blue haze appears around her ship before clearing in an instant. She then starts slowly pushing the ship forward, the green and blue hazes reappearing as her shield connects with the other vessels and quickly start to entangle together and create a way in for her. She then approaches until her craft is above the other vessel and activates the magnetic clamps to connect both ships together. A little tremor later, and she knows both ships are now connected properly. Now time to see what's inside of that weird tin can. She removes her left claw prosthetic and shakes her limb a bit before inserting it inside the plasma caster she prefers to use for breaching actions. Once she makes sure all the controls are correctly connected to her manipulator, she heads to her breaching tunnel. A nice little upgrade she gave her ship for situations like these, after she had accidentally killed a few slaves years ago during a rescue mission for a stranded ship. The poor kids had escaped their captors, but were too eager to be rescued and were standing inside the cargo hold when she had breached it. She had promised herself to never let that happen again, and the breaching tunnel was made for that. It essentially glued itself to the other hull and turned into a makeshift airlock, a precaution for when you were getting into a ship that had no atmosphere left inside, or contained a toxic atmosphere. She starts to put on her SEAL suit with the help of the wall-mounted robots, while she waits for the tube to be properly placed. When she hears the beep ring out through the ship, she crouches and opens the hatch, closes behind her, and starts to cut through the hull of the weird ship. The first few swipes of the caster seem to do nothing, but on the 5th pass, she starts to dig into the hull and quickly creates a breach large enough for all her limbs to fit through. A heat-resistant coating. It didn't stop plasma, so it's probably not made to go near a star to refuel directly. Maybe they prefer to have all the safeties they can. It would explain them figuring out how to run both shields and signal dampeners at the same time. As she finishes cutting the plate, it's momentarily pushed outwards below her, but before it can squash her against the hatch, it is stopped by safety rods in the tube, before falling back inside the ship with a huge clunk, as air fills the tube and stops pushing the plate on its way out. The reading in her helmet says mostly oxygen atmosphere. That's good news. If her suit ever gets punctured for whatever reason, at least she won't suffocate. They had told him everything would be fine. That, yes, the dryers were new, but had been properly tested and use in ships had been approved. That he was only going slightly outside of domain space, re-entering real space and then coming back for them to make all sorts of tests on the vessel. In and out, you get paid and you can go on your merry way, they said. But it all went wrong. It wasn't the dryers that failed. No, they worked exactly as advertised. Instead of simply allowing entry into hyperspace, they also allowed the formation of a tunnel through storms, more or less replicating the safe zones around Sol, where you could push dryers to their limits and beyond because it was simply impossible to encounter a storm there. That was actually working, but they hadn't warned him about the fact that it made maneuvering impossible. Just a few nanometers misaligned, and now his ship was rocketing through hyperspace off course. When he engaged the exit procedure, he came out in the void of space, his orientation systems unable to connect with domain comms, and leaving him in the dark as to where exactly he had ended up. System, take the ship to the nearest star system. I need some rest after the neural boost, but once I'm in proper shape, we'll try to calculate our position and a way back. His alarm is ringing next to him. Wanting to keep sleeping, he just grabs the device and throws it across the room. Just 5 more minutes, he says, in a sleepy tone. Numerous drones of unknown origin detected within the system. No detectable methods of overriding control of them. One of them seems to have located us, demanding input for future course of action. The artificial voice of the ship's system states, loudly through the comms after William threw his alarm away. Oh shit! Rising awake, William just grabs an undersuit and runs out of his room, and through a few corridors until he reaches the bridge. Status on the drones? Potential controller located. Ship near center of the system. Probability of having located a domain ship under 5%. Oh god. He sighs at the news. Do we have mission orders in case of first contact events? Lacking mission orders. Of course. William scratches his head thinking of what to do next. Okay, before we do anything, what are the laws surrounding first contact events? Ship scenes do not originate from the system. Law allows contact with interstellar alien lifeforms. Well, that's good news. At least I won't get sent to Charon for accidentally finding aliens. Correct. Any idea on how we can approach them without coming off as hostile? No actions required, operator. Vessel already approaching. Impact with shields estimated 5 minutes from now, according to current velocity. Well, let's see how they react to our shields then. He waits, looking at the approaching ship and trying to calm himself down. Request for directions, operator. Prepare security measures in case they're aggressive. Nothing that can emit an energy signature on the outer hull. We don't want to be the ones pissing them off. Directions received. William tries to keep calm as he stands next to the room breached by the alien. A power conduit was cut when they entered, so the surrounding rooms and corridors are all pitch black. He can still see, but he hopes that won't scare the intruder. He finally decides to open the door, and he gets his first look at the alien. It's clad in black armor, probably their exosuit. A big jagged scythe in place of one arm, and a big gun of some sort for the other. He thinks things aren't too bad for now, but he's quickly proven wrong, as the insect suddenly jumps backwards and points their weapon at him. He immediately takes a few steps back to distance himself, but trips and falls on his back. After a few seconds of processing the pain, he starts to get worried about scaring the alien even more. Until his enhanced sensors pick up weird sounds coming from it. He tries to figure out what it means, but when he lifts his head to look at it, it's making that weird sound and smacking the ground with their scythe. Is that thing making fun of me?